Hello, and we're back with another episode of Diving Deeper with myself, Andrew, and the Minister Ken. Today we're going to be talking about the day of Pentecost, which is recorded in Acts 2.
Yeah, so Acts 2, we won't read the whole thing, it's quite a long chapter, but the apostles all start speaking in different tongues, the disciples all start speaking different tongues, different languages, and the people think they're drunk.
Yeah.
And Peter gets up and he addresses the crowd. So verse 14, he gets up, he addresses the crowd, he says, "These men aren't drunk as you suppose, it's only 9 in the morning." And I think there's quite a bit of humour sometimes in the Bible, and we miss it. We think we're supposed to take it deadly seriously, and actually sometimes you can have a little chuckle at things that Peter's saying. You know, we're not drunk. It's 9 in the morning. You're supposed to find that a little bit funny.
Yeah.
So then Peter launches into quite a long speech about what's happened, and he quotes some Old Testament passages, some prophecies, a psalm, and so. The question is, the crowd already knew about Jesus' ministry, miracles, and death. So the crowd that were there already knew about Jesus. They knew about these things. So what is new in Peter's message? So looking at Acts 2, verses 22 to 36, what is new in Peter's message to the crowd?
Well, as I said, the crowd already knew about Jesus and who Jesus was and his ministry and what he did and his death, but they might not have put 2 and 2 together with when Peter started speaking. He took a verse from Psalms which David wrote, and they might not have put the 2 together, that Jesus fulfilled the prophecy, because it was said before, and
Yeah, so Peter makes this really strong link between David and Jesus, and he's trying to reinforce to the people of Israel that actually this is the prophesied Messiah.
Yeah.
He says there will always be one of David's descendants on the throne. God promised him on oath that he would place one of his descendants on the throne, and he's making that really strong link between Jesus and between David, trying to make sure the people of Israel know that this is part of their history and that this historical prophecy is being fulfilled. He also links the Jews very closely with Jesus' death. He says, "The man was handed over to you by God's set purpose and foreknowledge, and you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him to the cross." So he's very clearly blaming the people of Israel for the death of the Messiah. And that's something that they might not have considered considered previously. And the resurrection of Jesus as well, him being brought back to life, I think that's probably a new thing to some of the people that are listening. They may not have considered that before. What else is new then? Thinking about it's the day of Pentecost. It's all about the Holy Spirit. Anything else that's new in this passage that the people may not have considered previously?
The Holy Spirit?
Yeah, absolutely.
The Holy Spirit, obviously, the receiving of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I think that was new because they didn't quite understand. They saw it as just a bit of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
Of mumbo jumbo that was going on. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Peter says to the crowd, he has received from the Father the promised Holy Spirit and has poured out what you now see and hear. The people, probably the Jews there, would have been familiar with the Old Testament and some of the outpourings of the Spirit in their history, but they wouldn't have seen this themselves. And so now, on the day of Pentecost, the Spirit is available for all people. He's being poured out on all people, and see that manifested in him being poured out on the disciples. So this is new to the people. So quite an interesting question in some ways, because you kind of think, oh yeah, well the crowd would have known about Jesus. They would have seen his miracles and his ministry and his death. what is it that's new and original that Peter's saying to them? So all those things, that really strong link with the history of Israel, right the way back to David, that understanding that actually it was the Jews were culpable for the death of Jesus, and this understanding of the Holy Spirit now is being poured out on all people. He's there for everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite a lot of new original things there. So then we look at towards the end of chapter 2, so verses 42 to 47, where Luke gives us a description of the early Jerusalem church. What can you discover in these verses about the activities and attitudes of the early Christians?
Okay, so verse 42 to 47, it really speaks about like the early Christians. They're really eager, enthusiastic about the word. You know, they were meeting together all the time. They were praying together. They were going to the temple. So they were just very driven. They wanted the word. They were excited about it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like they knew nothing, but they just
Something that your wife Holly mentioned actually in our Bible study when we were looking at this. She said it was all about community and it was all about generosity. So shout out to Holly, because that was really good. It was all about community and generosity, and that's what she really saw in these few verses. These people were truly living together in community, and they were being generous to each other. And in particular, we get there in verse 42, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to prayer.
Yeah.
So they were absolutely devoted to these things. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine having the apostles among you?
Yeah.
Those 12 disciples actually among you, Peter and James and John. Yeah. You would be devoted to their teaching, wouldn't you? You'd want to lap up everything that they were talking about. And you get this real sense of excitement, this new fledgling church in Jerusalem just starting up, a real sense of excitement. There's a word there in verse 46, sincere. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. You just get this real sense of integrity, of sincerity. They really wanted to be doing it. They were really there. They were really sincere. It's quite an exciting image of that early church, isn't it? There's another thing there that strikes me, is that they enjoyed the favour of all the people. They enjoyed the favour of all the people. And when you get later in Acts and later in the New Testament, the church starts being persecuted and people don't like them. And you see that in Jesus' ministry. There's that sort of beginning of persecution. A lot of the people don't like Jesus, to the fact they end up executing him. And so it's interesting here at the beginning of Acts, they have the church has the favour of the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Wouldn't that be fantastic if the Lord added to our number daily the people that were being saved? Verse 41, those who accepted his message were baptised, and about 3,000 were added to that number that day. That would be great if we could see 3,000 come to faith, wouldn't it?
I'm sure people do across the world, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3,000 possibly across the world. Maybe not in Poole itself, but...
No. Yeah. Well, it would be wonderful, wouldn't it, if in our towns in this country we were seeing that those people come to faith, wouldn't it? And so, are any of these elements missing from our church? Thinking about these things that these early Christians devoted themselves to, the way they lived their lives, are any of these elements missing from our church?
I think not all churches, and I think I use the term church as a gathering of people to worship Jesus, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Not in terms of the building itself.
No.
So I think there are churches that have this excitement and things like that. But then also, when it just came to me, having a group of people in a church, sometimes maybe you're less inclusive because you have your people, kind of thing. And I'm not saying that is what it is, but you can become less inclusive because you don't want somebody to come and ruin your kind of
your
circle,
nice little group,
your nice little group. So that there could be an element of that, which is then possibly a problem. But
yeah, I mean, I remember when I first became a Christian, just before I was 20, in King's Church in Swanage, and we had a fantastic youth group, and it wasn't quite this, but it was close to this. We met a lot. We did lots of Bible studies together. You know, we'd meet up in each other's houses for meals. I remember one occasion I couldn't pay my rent, and they clubbed together and they raised the money for me to pay my rent. It didn't last all that long though, perhaps about 18 months or so, and then people started, you know, people would go to university, I joined the army, it all kind of fizzled out. So we perhaps had a year or 18 months of this quite intense but really good and sincere group meeting together. But then everyone sort of went off to do their own thing. So I don't know if you can sustain this. It would be nice to think that you can, but I don't know how long you can sustain that sort of group of people together.
well, you could say that, okay, when you had that and everybody went off on their everybody went off on their own journeys and things like that. Maybe then that's for those different people in their different areas to then introduce that to other groups of people, because they know what it's like, and they can then offer that to other people who are also possibly.
No, I think you're right, and I think that church is supposed to be a dynamic, moving organisation. It's not meant to be static. And you get in the story of Acts fairly quickly, the story moves away from Jerusalem and starts driving out across the world. So these people that have been discipled and nurtured here in Jerusalem, who understand what church is supposed to be about, and they getting the teaching of the apostles, they soon start driving out across the world. And so maybe there is a season for church to be like this, and for people to be nurtured and educated and understand what it's all about, and then be pushed out into the world to go and fulfill their own ministries wherever it may be. I mean, in one of our Bible studies, when we looked at this, someone said, it's very difficult to do that in this day and age. We live very different lives to the people back then. I'm not convinced of the validity of that, because I think back then people would have been busy. They'd have had their own lives. They'd have had work. They'd have had children. They'd have had taxes to pay. They'd have been under the Roman Empire. I don't think there's particularly anything more hindering us from living like this than there was those people, except of course, you know, we got mobile phones and we got technology and we got we've got distractions.
I think based on every moment in time, I think that the amount of distraction or the amount that hinders you to worship the Lord is the same. It's just depending on the time. We can say, looking back, but we have mobile phones, we have the internet and all of that stuff, and back then they didn't. But they had other stresses, they had, they had their rent to pay, their tax to pay. The Roman army were always on them. They were being oppressed, really. So, we can't compare us having this much freedom and mobile phones and internet to somebody being oppressed day in, day out by Roman soldiers and things like that. So I feel like their pressures and our pressures are the same amount of pressures, but we still have to make the time to push through. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So what can we do to sort of gain something of this in our churches, not just thinking of Longfleet Baptist Church, but in all the churches that we've been part of, or that you're part of out there, what is there anything we can do to sort of gain even a little bit of this sense of church? And I think to some extent we do it here at Longfleet. We have got a nice community of people. If someone's ill, lots of people will go and visit. If someone's in need, there are financial gifts that are given either officially by the church or unofficially by groups in the church. So I think we do this to some extent. But how do we get a little bit more of it?
That's an interesting one, but yeah. I think an answer for me is to like kind of live your word that you're reading. As easy as that sounds, it like anything, it's a journey, and it's a process, and it's the work that the Holy Spirit is doing within you is like transforming you from the inside out. And I feel like the fruits of the Spirit will allow for these scenarios, for you to be more loving, for you to want that community, to speak to people like-minded who are going through the same things, to bring joy to others around you, even if they're not Christians, or to be that light in the darkness. And I feel like the more I read my word, the more I feel that wanting to do that for people. So I think all in all, the word is important, is most important, and I think the fruits of that will show within the community that you kind of will keep, or the community that will gravitate towards you, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also deliberately prioritising church,
that one too.
But as you said, church as the community of people, not the building and the hierarchy and the bureaucracy and all that, but the community of people. And our little sort of young adults group, you do things, you take quite a leading role in that. It started as a Bible study on Mondays, but you do socials and things. You have people around to your home. You went out bowling, didn't you? Stuff like that.
We used to do that more.
Yeah,
to be honest,
exactly. And it's that prioritising church in your life. And we're all so busy, and we've all got so much going on. But sometimes we just need to go, actually, what's my priority going to be? Because is church important, or is it not? I personally think it's the most important organisation on earth. This church is the way that God interacts with the world, and the world interacts with God. And so as Christians, we need to prioritise church, prioritise our community of believers.
That is, yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
And getting together, inviting a group round for a meal in your house, organising a bowling trip, prioritising Bible study or whatever it is, they're important.
Yeah, no, it is important to prioritise, because I know this as a chef, working the hours I work, you can then kind of make an excuse up for yourself to say that you like the hours you work and things like that, which is granted, but there's 24 hours in a day, right? 7 days a week, right? And if you're saying, but because I work 5 days a week and I'm doing 14-hour shifts, I've not made even 10 minutes or 15 minutes of time to spend with God. Then you kind of put yourself in that mindset, that it's excusable. But
it's like a lot of things in our Christian walk. It's about finding that balance, because you don't want to slog your guts out and end up absolutely shattered and tired and useless to yourself and useless to everyone else. But we do need to examine ourselves. Am I making an excuse? Am I saying, I'm too busy, I'm doing this, that and the other, I haven't got time for church, I haven't got time for God? So it's about, we're talking about the Holy Spirit and his ministries. one of those ministries is the self-examination. He helps us to do that and look at ourselves. Actually, am I genuinely tired and I need to take a break? Because sometimes there is that, and the Spirit will minister to that. Other times he'll say, actually, you need a bit of self-discipline, you need a bit of grit, and prioritise the spiritual things in life, the Christian things in life.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's good.
Excellent. So perhaps a slightly different look at the day of Pentecost to what we often do. We're going to continue this theme of the Holy Spirit next week, when we're going to look at Romans 8, and Paul talks a bit about the Spirit. We didn't want to do them both together today because I thought they were slightly a bit confusing perhaps. So there we go, there's our quick, rapid run through Acts 2. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and I hope perhaps it's inspired you to think a bit about church and where you prioritise that in your life. Is it a priority like it was for these people, or is it several steps down the ladder? Because I do think church is a vitally important organisation on earth. So as ever we do, send you our prayers. If you're watching to this, wherever you are, whenever you're watching it, be assured that our prayers are there with you, and that we hope that you would receive the Spirit in the way the people of Pentecost did, that he would be there for you, very real in your life, ministering to you and your church as well. So God bless you, and we'll see you again next week.
Yeah.